Hello my lovelies, welcome back to another video. I hope you all are doing absolutely amazing and I'm so happy to have you here with me today. For today's recipe, we are making something I absolutely love. These gorgeous, soft, fluffy and irresistibly gooey cinnamon rolls. They are beautifully golden on the outside, wonderfully soft and fluffy in the middle, filled with that delicious buttery cinnamon sugar filling and finished with the most creamy and dreamy cream cheese frosting. I'm going to take you through the whole process from start to finish, so don't worry if you've never made cinnamon rolls before. We will be making the dough from scratch, giving it plenty of time to rise so it becomes beautifully soft and fluffy. Preparing that delicious cinnamon filling, rolling and shaping our cinnamon rolls, and then baking them until they are perfectly golden and smelling absolutely incredible. And of course, we can't forget the best part, the frosting. Once our cinnamon rolls are fresh out of the oven, we're going to top them with a rich creamy cheese frosting that melts beautifully over those warm rolls. Honestly lovelies, just talking about them is making me hungry. And before we get started, I just want to take a moment to say a very big thank you to everyone who has subscribed to my channel and continue to support me. Whether you've been here from the beginning or you've only recently joined, I truly appreciate every single one of you. Every like, comment, view and the kind message means so much to me and I'm incredibly grateful to have you here. If you are new here and you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing and joining this little family. I would absolutely love to have you here and I hope you will stick around for more delicious recipes, baking ideas and a lot of cozy kitchen moments. So my lovelies, get comfortable, grab your ingredients and let's get baking. The very first thing I'm going to do is to start making the dough. I begin with my warm milk and pour it into a large mixing bowl. Now lovelies, when I say warm milk, you don't want it to be extremely hot. It should still feel comfortably warm to touch, but definitely not boiling or steamy hot. The reason for this is because we are going to be working with the yeast and yeast can be affected by very high temperatures. If the milk is too hot, it can weaken the yeast and that can prevent your dough from not rising properly. So warm is perfect. The next thing I do is to crack in the eggs, then add my melted butter as well. The butter adds richness to the dough and helps give the cinnamon rolls that soft, tender texture we are looking for. And of course, I add some vanilla flavoring. I really love adding vanilla flavor to cinnamon roll dough because even though cinnamon is going to be one of the main flavor, the vanilla gives the dough a beautiful aroma and add another layer of flavor. I whisk everything together until the eggs are completely incorporated and the butter and vanilla are evenly distributed throughout the milk. Everything should be nicely combined and now we can move on to our dry ingredients. In a separate bowl, I'm going to start with the flour. I sift the flour first. Sifting isn't always absolutely necessary, but I like to do it because it helps break down any lumps and gives us a lighter, more evenly mixed flour. Once that's done, I add the sugar, then I add my yeast and salt. I mix everything really well together. This helps make sure that the sugar, yeast and salt are spread evenly instead of ending up concentrated in just one area of the dough. Once everything is well combined, I make a little well in the center for the wet ingredients. Now I pour in the wet mixture right into the center of the dry ingredients. I start mixing everything together with my wooden spatula. At this stage lovelies, the mixture is going to be a little messy and that's completely normal. We are simply bringing all the ingredients together at this point. As the wet ingredients absorb into the flour, you will notice the mixture becoming thicker and thicker. And eventually everything will start coming together and you will have a soft, shaggy dough. This is what we are looking for. The dough does not need to look perfectly smooth yet because we are going to develop the dough further during the kneading process. Once the dough has come together, I transfer it onto my lightly floured work surface. And now it's time to knead lovelies. We are going to knead this by hand for about 8 to 10 minutes. If you have a stand mixer, you can absolutely use it for this step. A dough hook will make the process easier, especially when you are making a larger batch. You can absolutely make these cinnamon rolls by hand exactly the way I'm doing, and honestly, kneading by hand is a great way to learn how your dough should feel. At the beginning, the dough is going to be a little sticky And I know it can be tempting to immediately add a lot of extra flour because you don't want the dough sticking to your hands. But try not to add extra flour. A little stickiness at the beginning is completely normal, and adding too much of flour can make your cinnamon rolls heavier and drier instead of soft and fluffy. Instead, I'm going to keep kneading and let the dough develop naturally. As we knead, we are developing the gluten in the flour. Gluten is what gives the dough structure and elasticity. As it develops, you will notice a big difference in the structure. The dough will gradually become smoother, more elastic, and easier to handle. At first, it may look rough and uneven, but after several minutes of kneading, it should start looking much smoother. We're also looking for a dough that feels soft and elastic rather than stiff. And this is the texture we are looking for. The dough is soft, smooth and elastic. If I gently press it, it should bounce back immediately and feel smooth rather than rough. Once I'm okay with the dough, I shape it into a ball, then place it into a lightly oiled bowl. I spray a little oil on top as well. You want to cover the bowl tightly, my lovelies, and let the dough rest in a warm spot for about 60 to 90 minutes or until it starts rising nicely. The exact amount of time can vary depending on the temperature of your kitchen. If your kitchen is warmer, your dough may rise more quickly. If your kitchen is cooler, it may take longer, so you don't rely only on the clock. The most important thing, lovelies, is to look at the dough and see how much it has risen. While the dough is resting and doing its thing, I'm going to take advantage of this time and clean up the kitchen. I honestly love doing this while I'm waiting for whatever I'm baking or cooking because it saves so much time later. Instead of finishing the recipe and looking at the kitchen full of dirty bowls, utensils, flour and everything else I've used, I do the cleaning while cooking or baking. So I wash the dishes, clean up the sink, wipe down my work surface and put everything back where it belongs. Now that we are done with the dishes and everything, let's start preparing our cinnamon filling. I have some softened butter here. It's important that your butter is softened rather than completely cold because we want to spread evenly over the dough later. If the butter is too cold, it can tear the dough when we are trying to spread it. And if it is extremely melted, it can become difficult to keep the filling evenly distributed. So nice and soft is exactly what we want, my lovelies. In a small bowl, I add my brown sugar and cinnamon powder. I mix these two ingredients together really well. You want the cinnamon powder to be evenly distributed all through the sugar so that when we spread the filling over the dough, we don't want to end up with some areas that have a lot of cinnamon while other areas barely have any. Then I add a small pinch of salt, and please lovelies, don't skip that little pinch of salt. You might think, why are we adding salt to something that is supposed to be sweet? But salt actually helps balance sweetness and enhance the other flavors. It helps bring out the warm cinnamon flavor and keeps the filling from tasting overly sweet or flat. I give everything another really good mix, and that's it, my lovelies. Our cinnamon filling is ready and waiting for the dough. Okay, let's check on our dough, lovelies. Look at that. You can see that the dough has expanded and become much fuller. This is exactly what we want. You don't necessarily need to worry about getting an exact size or relying only on a specific time. What matters most is that the dough has a visible rising and looks soft, airy and puffy. You can gently press the dough with your finger to release the trap there. At this point, the dough should feel much lighter and more relaxed than it did before rising. Now, before we continue, I actually want to show you something because I had an interesting experience while making these cinnamon rolls. I have two doughs here and I want to explain what happened with them. The first dough was made with an old dry active yeast. Unfortunately, the dough did not rise properly. And this is really important lesson when you're working with yeast. Sometimes the problem isn't your recipe, it isn't your flour or the temperature of your kitchen. The yeast itself may be simply no longer be active enough. Once you open your yeast, you don't want to just leave it in the packet open in your pantry. Yeast can be affected by moisture, heat, air, and time. So once you have opened the package, it's a good idea to seal it properly and store it according to the instructions on the package. And always check the best before and the expiration dates before using it. If you are unsure whether your yeast is still active or not, simply combine a little of the yeast with some warm water from your recipe and a little sugar. Then allow it to sit for around 5 to 10 minutes. If the yeast becomes foamy and bubble, that's a good indication that it's still active. So if you are using yeast that has been open for a while, it's worth checking before using it for your recipes. So back to the main dough, lovelies. I take it out of the bowl and place it on my work surface. Now it's time to roll out the dough and get ready for all that delicious cinnamon filling. I transfer the dough onto my lightly oil worked surface. I spray just a small amount of oil, not too much, because I want to prevent the dough from sticking whilst keeping it easy to handle. I shape the dough gently into a rough rectangle first. This makes it a little easier to roll it out evenly. Now you want to roll the dough out to approximately 16 by 12 inches, which is about 40 by 30 centimeters. As you are rolling, try to keep the thickness as even as possible. You can occasionally lift the dough slightly and check the underneath to make sure it's not sticking. Take your time with this step, lovelies. You don't have to force the dough into a perfect rectangle right away. Just roll gently from the center outward and rotate or adjust the dough as needed. We want the dough to become thin enough to give us plenty of beautiful layers, but not so thin that it's become difficult to work with. If one side is much thicker than the other side, your cinnamon rolls may end up different sizes and texture after baking. I spread my softened butter evenly over the entire surface of the dough. You want the butter to be soft enough to spread evenly, not melted. If the butter is too melted, it can make the dough slippery and cause the filling leak out when we roll it. Lovelies, make sure to get all the way to the edges, especially the corners, so every bite has that delicious buttery flavor. I sprinkle the brown sugar and cinnamon mixture evenly over the butter. I like to spread it gently with my fingers or a spoon so that the mixture reaches all the way across the dough. We want a nice even layer of filling from the edge to edge. This is what gives the cinnamon rolls those beautiful swirls and that rich cinnamon flavor throughout. Spread it evenly means you will get that delicious cinnamon sugar filling in every single roll. Now we are ready to roll everything up. Start from one of the longer side. I'm going to tightly roll the dough into a log. I roll it firmly, but I'm not squeezing or pressing too hard. We want the layer to stay intact while still creating a nice tight spiral. As you roll, try to keep the log as even as possible from one end to another. If one side gets tighter than the other, your cinnamon rolls can end up with different sizes. Just keep rolling and gently tucking the dough underneath as you go. Lovelies, you can see those layers already start to form. Now we just need to divide the log into individual rolls. I'm going to cut these into 12 rolls. There are a couple of different ways you can do this. You can use a sharp knife just like I do, or use an unflavored Delta flux. Cut the log with whatever you're using into each rolls. I place the cinnamon rolls into a greased 9 by 13 inches baking dish. Arrange them evenly, leaving a little space in between each one so they have enough room to expand. As they prove, they will become larger, softer, and they will start touching each other. Now lovelies, you want to cover the baking pan and let the roll rise for another 30 to 45 minutes or until they are nice and puffy. This exact time can vary depending on how warm your kitchen is, so don't worry too much about the clock. What we are really looking for is the dough to become visible, puffier and lighter. While they are doing their second rise, I'm also going to preheat my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 degrees Celsius. That way, once the rolls are ready, the oven will already be hot and we can get them baking right away. It's been 45 minutes already and look at them, lovelies. You can see how the rolls have expanded and started to fill the baking dish. This is exactly what we want. A good way to tell they are ready is that they should look soft and hairy. I pour some heavy cream over the dough. The heavy cream adds moisture and richness, making the cinnamon rolls incredibly soft, fluffy and gooey. As they bake, the cream soaks into the dough and creates that melt in your mouth texture. Just pour a little heavy cream over the rising rolls before baking and you will get beautifully tender bakery style cinnamon rolls. Now lovelies, they are ready for the oven. I transfer them into my preheated oven and bake them at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 degrees Celsius for about 22 to 28 minutes. We are looking for a beautiful golden brown color on top while keeping the center soft and fluffy. Lovelies, make sure not to overbake the cinnamon rolls. It's very easy to leave them in the oven for a few extra minutes because you're waiting for them to become darker on top. But that's one of the easiest ways to end up with a dry cinnamon rolls. If you're using a kitchen thermometer, the center should be around 190 degrees Fahrenheit or 88 degrees Celsius. Remember that the rolls will continue cooking slightly from the residual heat after they come out of the oven. Allow the cinnamon rolls to cool for some minutes. While they cool slightly, let's make the cream cheese frosting. I start by beating together my softened cream cheese and butter until they are completely smooth and creamy. It's important both ingredients are softened because that will help prevent lumps in the frosting. Once the cream cheese are nice and smooth, I add my powdered sugar. I'm going to continue whipping everything together until the frosting becomes light, smooth and fluffy. If your frosting looks a little too thick, don't worry lovelies, just add a small amount of milk, about 1 teaspoon at a time, and mix again. You don't want to add too much of liquid at once because it's much easier to thin out frosting gradually than to fix frosting that has become too runny. I add my vanilla flavor, then whip again until it's properly mixed together. And this is the consistency I'm looking for, creamy and spreadable but still thick enough to sit beautifully on top of the cinnamon rolls. I'm going to spread the cream cheese frosting over the rolls while they are still warm. I like doing this while they are still warm because the frosting starts to soften and melt slightly into those beautiful layers. Look at that lovelies, the frosting is melting into the rolls without completely disappearing. It's getting into all those little cinnamon swirls, which is exactly what we want. This is honestly one of my favorite moments when making cinnamon rolls. Look at those beautiful layers lovelies. You can see how soft and fluffy the dough is with that buttery cinnamon sugar feeling running through every layer. This is exactly how I love my cinnamon rolls. The outside has that beautiful golden color while the inside stays soft and tender. And then you have your soft, fluffy, going homemade cinnamon rolls. So my lovelies, I hope that little Yeast storage tip I shared earlier was helpful. If you tried this recipe, I would absolutely love to know how your cinnamon rolls turned out, especially if you made any changes or added your own twist to the recipe. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel and turn on your notification bell so you don't miss my next video. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and letting me share one of my favorite homemade recipe with you lovelies. And I hope you will give it a try. I will see you in my next video and bye lovelies.